In 12th century Karnataka, society was calcified by a rigid caste system and a temple-centric economy. This structure excluded common people from any path to spiritual liberation. Later mythology often framed the era's greatest philosopher, Allama Prabhu, as a divine incarnation of the god Shiva, but historical evidence points to a grounded reality. He was born a human in the Baligavi region, a major center of learning in the 12th century. He led a secular early life. He was a master of the madale, a traditional South Indian two-headed drum, and married a woman named Kamalate. The sharpest philosophical mind of the century did not begin his journey as an untouchable ascetic. He was an ordinary man embedded in the very worldly system he would eventually dismantle. Kamalate died suddenly. Plunged into deep grief, Allama abandoned his life as a musician and began to wander aimlessly. During his wandering, he discovered a ruined hidden temple. Inside, he encountered a master known as the Animisha Yogi. The Animisha Yogi conferred the Ishtalinga Diksha, a spiritual initiation centering on a personal, wearable emblem of the divine. This ritual marked the transition from Allama's outward wandering to an internal focus that superseded his grief. This animation illustrates his philosophy of shunya, which he described as a point without one. It represents a state where every mathematical expansion of the physical world eventually returns to its origin, a dense, dynamic equilibrium that human logic cannot categorize. The musician who had lost everything began to perceive that his grief was the final attachment to a world of illusions. As he moved through the years following that encounter, the layers of his personal identity were systematically stripped away, eventually leaving only the mystic behind. He soon arrived in Kalyana, the epicenter of the Sharana movement. The Sharana movement was a 12th century socio-religious revolution in South India, dedicated to building a society of absolute equality. Basavana, the founder of the movement, immediately recognized Allama's supreme intellect. He appointed Allama as the president of the Anubhava Mantapa. The Anubhava Mantapa was the world's first spiritual parliament, a public hall where mystics from all backgrounds gathered to debate. Allama presided over these debates from the Shunya Pita, the throne of the void. It was a golden seat entirely surrounded by sharp swords. The swords were a physical warning. They signified that spiritual leadership is a highly perilous path, requiring the absolute destruction of the ego, a design that served to terrify false saints seeking easy power. From this throne, he critiqued the great philanthropist Siddharama. Allama argued that good deeds, known as karma, cannot achieve ultimate liberation without deep spiritual knowledge. He operated as the movement's intellectual quality control. He demanded philosophical rigor over mere emotion from everyone who approached the throne. He confronted Basavana directly. He warned the movement's leader that blind devotion to monks without underlying knowledge is a dangerous trap. He challenged the fiercely independent female mystic Akka Mahadevi. He applied a ruthless intellectual acid test to question the authenticity of her absolute worldly detachment. Akka Mahadevi passed his test. He welcomed her into the parliament, demonstrating his commitment to absolute intellectual equality regardless of gender. To reach the masses, he communicated through Betty Gama Rachanas. These enigmatic, paradoxical poems utilized everyday Kannada vocabulary to express complex spiritual concepts. This visualizes his curious cow metaphor. The tiny core shape is the human soul. The massive shapes weighing it down are the cow's anatomy. The abnormally large udders represent sensory overload, while the huge horns represent the destructive human ego, specifically I and mine. He used paradoxical poetry to actively short-circuit the intellectual ego of his followers. He forced them to experience the truth rather than just read it. Anticipating the political collapse of the Kalyana experiment, Allama dispensed final guidance to his peers and left the Anubhava Mantapa. He journeyed south to the dense, remote forests of Kadali Vana in Srisila. Historical alternatives suggest he may have rested in Gadag, a district in modern Karnataka that still maintains a resting place in his name. Here he entered Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Nirvikalpa Samadhi is an absolute, objectless lucid trance where the mind becomes entirely still. He achieved Lingaikya, the state where the finite physical and spiritual self seamlessly merged with the infinite Gueshvalinga, or the void. In his philosophical framework, he did not experience death. He achieved the goal of perfectly dissolving his individuality into the infinite fabric of the universe. Zooming out from South Asia, his concept of shunya shares striking similarities with the Zen Buddhist concept of mu. Mu is a philosophical term often translated as emptiness or non-being. His use of paradoxical poetry parallels the use of koans. Koans are riddles used in Zen Buddhism to provoke enlightenment by breaking the logical mind. His ultimate state of spiritual union mirrors the Islamic Sufi concepts of fana, the annihilation of the self, and baka, abiding in the divine. His vision of a reality without attributes closely aligns with the divine void described centuries later by the Christian mystic Meister Eckhart. Allama Prabhu stands as an intellectual titan who used language to dismantle the very ego that produces it. From the Shunya Pitha to his cryptic Vachanas, his work provides a specific, rigorous method for achieving absolute equality by first achieving an absolute internal void.